to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story has been sent in by Matt, my subscriber, and wow, what an encounter this is, guys. I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this story. Of course, please do let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share. If you haven't subscribed to the DMT channel, please hit that subscribe button and the notification symbol so you can stay up to date with all content we bring out on the DMT channel. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's story, sent in by Matt, entitled The Piggly Wiggly Monster. Let's get straight into that. It has taken a long time to finally identify what exactly that creature was that charged me all those years ago in that small park in southern Indiana. You see, it happened back in the dark ages, in the summer of 1993. The internet was unheard of, home computers were very rare, phones were still for your house, and UB40 was tearing up the airwaves with their rendition of Elvis Presley's classic, I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. I was 16 that summer. It was one of those summers you never forget. A lot happened that summer. Riding around in a stolen car, moving away from all of my friends, learning how to play chess. It was a summer to remember. Still, though, after all these years, the one event that stands out over all the rest was the night that I came face to face with Piggly Wiggly. I am now 40, and that sighting has changed the way I see the world, and especially the supernatural world. I didn't know much about cryptids at the time. Like I said, no internet. I had of course heard of Bigfoot and thought it was a myth. I had seen werewolf movies, but at the time thought they were nothing more than folklore made up to scare people in the days of the Salem witch hunts. I don't believe like that anymore. I was never much of a stoner. Pot always had effects on me that I deemed less than relaxing. First, it made me very paranoid. Second, it made me very hungry. And lastly, very sleepy. Despite never really enjoying it, I would, however, partake from time to time with friends, in the spirit of going along to get along. Such was the case the first time Piggly Wiggly ever entered my reality. Jeremy was new to the apartment complex, but he and I hit it off right away. He also got along with my very best friend, Charlie. Jeremy had a very troubled home life, and his mother was a very avid pot smoker, thus he had access to it pretty much at will. One day, he invited Charlie and me out to the woods behind the apartments. I say woods in quotes, as they are not really what I would think of as woods, not the kind of area you would expect to experience nature or anything like that. It was just a bunch of trees for maybe 2 or 3 football fields in length, and as wide as 2 or 3 football fields as well. It had basically one trail that led from the apartments to a little park where we used to go play basketball. Apart from that, it had a creek bed that ran adjacent to the trail on the south side, with maybe another 50 to 100 yards of woods on the far side of the creek, and then it was houses. Lots of houses. So, like I said, not a place you'd expect to encounter nature. I have lived with my dad in West Virginia for several years, and I had hiked up in real woods and encountered real nature. We had even come face to face with a bear once on an afternoon hike in West Virginia State Park. At that time, I doubted if these little woods even had deer. I had seen squirrels, but that was all I figured lived in that tiny section of woods. One important thing to note, however, is that on the north side of the woods and park was a fenced-in rock quarry. Anyone who has ever studied deep underground military bases, or DUMBS, might find this fact interesting. I don't know if this quarry was linked to any supposed underground secret bases, but it's an interesting point aside. So, as I was saying, the three of us walked back into the woods. We got far enough off the trail and actually came all the way to the creek. We decided that this was secluded enough to smoke a little. We took turns hitting the joints, and as one would smoke, the other would kind of face away from the creek, just watching towards the trail to make sure nobody was heading our way. I had hit it 2 or 3 times already, and felt that first wave of paranoia start to creep in. I was thinking, I hope the FBI aren't out here on patrol. Now, I know, the thought of FBI agents in the tiny wooded section of a local neighbourhood park is absurd. But remember, Pot always made me stupid paranoid. The thoughts were still in my head when I heard it. From the other side of the creek I heard footsteps running, as if in a mad dash running down the creek bed hill, splashing through the shallow water, and I knew all that was left for the runner to come up the creek bed hill on our side, right where Charlie was standing, taking his turn smoking. Jeremy and I were facing the other way, but we both heard the splashing water, and I think most of the southern Indiana must have heard Charlie scream, "Run!" We darted off through the woods and back towards the trail. I had the thought of two men with blue windbreakers and baseball caps with the letter FBI on them, hot on our trail. I ran even faster, not sure exactly where Charlie or Jeremy were in relation to me. I could hear them, but I was running so hard, my eyes had teared up, and mixed with the buzz from the THC, it was as if I was running through a tunnel and everything in my peripheral vision was darkened. I just kept listening for my friend's footsteps and adjusting my direction towards them. As I was running, I ran right through a giant spider web. The park was full of spider webs that year. They were huge, perfectly circular, and made by these large black and yellow spiders. They were creepy, and I hate spiders. I realised I now had a thick web all over my head and face while running full speed through the woods in what felt like a tunnel. If that wasn't bad enough, it got even worse. As I was wiping the web off my face and out of my hair, one of those ugly spiders came dangling from my head and swinging in front of my face. I never touch bugs, especially spiders. I hate bugs with a passion. Still, without thinking about it, I swatted this ugly motherfucker away from my person before the momentum would allow him to swing right back in my face. About 90 seconds after the shout heard all around the world, the three of us made it out of the woods and past the park and into the neighbourhood. Charlie had made it first and I was last. I saw Charlie slow down and begin to walk, so him being the one who knew what was going on, I figured it was safe to stop running too. I looked at my friend and asked with sincerity, "Was it the FBI?" "What?" "No," Charlie hesitantly said. "It was a monster." I laughed right away. Oh my goodness, here, I thought, I was being chased by authorities. It was my best friend's imagination. His face was pale, he was shaking, and although I knew he was not joking, I couldn't help myself from teasing him. "Yeah, right, like Piggly Wiggly monster." I don't know why I said that. I had seen a Piggly Wiggly grocery store once or twice in my lifetime, but why that came out, I'll never know. Still, the name stuck, and all these years later the creature is still called by that name by myself and my old friends. I could tell Charlie didn't want to talk about it, but I couldn't let it go. We took the long way back to my apartment, navigating through the neighbourhood streets and staying away from the woods. The whole way back I kept pressing him to talk to me. He was very reluctant to speak. I was never known to go easy on my friends when they said or did something foolish, so I could understand why he didn't want to open up. He knew, if I didn't believe him already, I had teased him when he first said it was a monster. His mannerisms and strange behaviour made me think it was more than just that. It seemed as if he was hiding something from me. Charlie and I didn't hide anything from each other in those days. We were closer than brothers. We knew everything about one another, or so I thought. When we got back to my place, Charlie said there was something he wanted to tell us. He said it's something he swore to secrecy about, and that is why he never had told me. By this time my buzz was gone, and if the chase didn't sober me up, then this completely surprising revelation that Charlie had a secret that he never shared with me was plenty enough to do the trick. The next part of this story is what happened to Charlie about 3 years prior to that day. He says he was camping with some friends in those woods very near to that park. If I remember correctly, there were about 6 of them in a tent that night. 2 of the boys were brothers that I met when I first moved into the apartment, but they moved away very shortly after I moved there. Besides the brothers and Charlie, I don't remember who else he said was there that night. It was dark, and the boys were in their tent telling stories and just doing what teenage campers do. He said they kept hearing a rustling sound, maybe 75 feet away in the brush. They tried to ignore it for a while at first, but then it wouldn't stop. A couple of the boys decided to take some flashlights and check it out. Two of the boys walked out to the brush where the sound was coming from and shined their lights at the thing moving around. In horror, they both turned towards the tent where the other campers were watching, with their heads sticking out the zipper, and yelled, "Run!" At that point, he said a monster came charging at the boys. He headed straight towards the tent, and it was a mad scramble as the boys tried to get out of the tent and away from the beast. They left the tent and all of their gear. They all made it out safely and retreated to the apartment of the brothers, where they stayed the rest of the night. They told their dad, who happened to be a police officer. Now, he took their story serious enough that he took another officer with him the next day and searched those woods. From what Charlie told me, the brothers told him, their dad searched the woods and found what appeared to be a homeless man sleeping near a creek bed near the quarry. This would have to be a different creek than the one we were at that day, as it and the quarry are on opposite sides of the trail. I am guessing this is beyond the no trespassing fence line that belongs to the quarry. The sleeping man saw the officers and ran. That's all he was told happened that day. But after that, the boys' dad called all the boys and warned them never to speak of this to anyone ever again. Then the dad took the boys and moved them away. This I can confirm. The family did move away suddenly. I sat there taking all of this in. Charlie was not lying. He may have been completely wrong about what happened, and I was pretty sure he was, but what he was saying, he believed really happened to him. I didn't believe there was a monster living in those shallow woods, not for a second. But still, the thought of it being true excited me. I had to know. I had to find out for myself. I decided we had to go and find out. Jeremy was more skeptical than I was, but he was all for the monster hunt. Charlie was very, very much against it. It took a lot more for me to convince him. I used the old, "oh, no one will believe you unless we see it ourselves" trick. Something I said finally got through to him, and he agreed to go with us. I came up with a plan to find Piggly Wiggly. I would take some stakes out of the freezer and tie them to a tree about 3/4 of the way to the park trail. Then we would take some flashlights after dark and walk along the trail to the park and see if this thing was real or not. We would stop along the way and see if the stakes were still hanging in the tree. Well, we went and enlisted 2 other friends of ours to join the search party. I told them my plan and took one with me to verify that I set up the bait. We walked about 3/4 of the way to the park, and I found the tree that would be easy to spot at night. I climbed up about 10 feet from the ground. I didn't want it to be low enough for where a dog could get to it. I tied it up and we walked back. I have to say, I was very excited for the adventure. I spent the rest of the day telling other friends what we were doing and trying to get them to come along. In the end though, only original 5 said yes. That night, when it got dark, we met at my house. We had only 2 flashlights and Charlie brought a small bat. I went over the plans again. I told them we would walk through the whole trail to the park and on the way check on our bait. We started towards the woods. We could just barely see the trail when one of the boys who agreed to come got cold feet and said, "I have to go home and take a dump." Of course, I used this to tease him of being a scaredy cat. So now we were 4. As we approached the edge of the woods, I was surprised at how timid Jeremy had become. He believed in this story less than any of us, yet I could sense a little fear from him. I wasn't afraid at all, and I decided to take the lead position. Besides, I hung the stakes and would know when we got to the tree. It was dark on that trail. The treetops covered any light the moon would have supplied. It seemed fun still as we began down the trail towards the park. I knew everyone behind me was a little scared, but honestly, I don't think I was. I'd spent so much time in much deeper woods, often by myself, and this still, to me, was not really the woods and nothing could live in here. However, out of respect for Charlie, who I knew didn't want to be there, I decided to not clown around and try and scare the others. When we were only about 1/4 of the way to the park, the sounds started. It sounded like it came from the direction we were heading to. I swear it sounded like someone or something was breaking sticks. Snap, snap, and then nothing for a few minutes. Then snap, crackle, snap. I had to admit that was weird, but in my mind, only a human would be doing that. Why would a Piggly Wiggly monster be breaking sticks? As we progressed, the sound was louder and louder, and I did start to get that creepy feeling in my stomach. A mutiny was beginning as the other guys were talking about going back. I kept trying to press them by saying, "Just a little further to the tree, guys. We have to see if the stakes are still up there." After what seemed like it took 3 times the normal amount of time to walk the path, we arrived at the tree. I took a flashlight and began to search for my stakes. By this time the cracking of sticks had stopped, and it was very quiet all around us. I waved my light to and fro and back and forth. Nothing. They were gone. Admittedly, now I was creeped out. What in these woods could climb a tree and eat steak? I began to get fearful. I said, "Let's get out of here." I was the leader and decided we were closer to the park than the apartments. The park had lights on the far end and houses just past it. Besides, we had not heard the noises for several minutes. I didn't run. I didn't want to spook the others, but I did pick up the pace tremendously, and no one complained about that. The 4th kid to join was whimpering a little the rest of the way, which actually kind of made me more afraid. I kept thinking, what have I got us into? Then we came to the end of the trail and out of the woods. I was relieved. Not too far off the street, there was a light and all the houses. We kept walking, and we walked to the right through the park, and that's when I saw it. Piggly Wiggly. Standing just outside the moonlight in the shadows of the park picnic shelter. It was far enough away that I couldn't get a great bit of detail, but close enough to know it wasn't quite human. It was standing on 2 legs and a little hunched over, hairy with long, straight arms, strong arms, and maybe 6 feet tall. It's hard to describe what you think when your natural mind comes in contact with the supernatural. It's confusing and overwhelming and very real and surreal all at once. It feels very similar to being in a dream. The boy behind me who had been whimpering had stopped walking as well. I could tell he too was seeing what I was seeing. Charlie had now spotted the figure as well. All this seemed like minutes but was actually only seconds. The creature then stood up, and now seeing it shift its position, I knew it was not my imagination anymore. We took off and sprinted to the house line just outside the park. We were gasping in unbelief and talking over one another about what that thing was and what it looked like. We were all teared up and in shock. Well, all of us except Jeremy, that is. You see, he was the last in our single file line, and by the time he reached the end of the woods where we had all stopped to see Piggly Wiggly, the 3 of us took off running before he had seen it. Great, I thought to myself. Without Jeremy, the most sceptical of all of us, to collaborate on our story, we might as well have not even come on this search party. I decided the only way for him to believe us was for me to show him the creature. The other 2 boys refused to take 1 step closer to the park, so I walked back about 200 feet or so with Jeremy. I stayed within the light of the street lamp that lit up the driveway of the park. We could see the picnic shelters fine from there. I was bummed that the monster was no longer standing where it was though. I thought, great, now he's going to think we're all crazy like I thought about Charlie all day. I sighed very heavily in defeat and said to him, he was right over there, as I pointed to the dark shelter. But as I turned to Jeremy, I noticed I was alone. Jeremy was gone. I thought to myself, huh? What's all this about? As I straightened my head back out, I saw Piggly Wiggly charging at me full speed. He was already within the light of the street lamp, and I now had a perfect view of this freak from less than 20 feet away. It had a long muzzle like a wolf. It was covered in brown fur, muscular, and when it ran, it would touch the floor with its ape-like arms for stability. I turned and ran faster than I ever had or have since. I even passed Jeremy, who had spotted the beast before me and failed to say anything to me before fleeing. Later, he would admit he tried to yell, but in fear, nothing came out. We made it back home safely. I took my dog out there the next day and she was going crazy. I let her go and she kept barking at the tree line and then the tree that had fallen. I inspected the tree and noticed a bunch of broken sticks beside it. I immediately thought of the sounds from the night before, and then I noticed something else inside a hollow of the tree. Bones. Lots of small animal bones. I don't know if they were local dogs or squirrels. I don't know, and I didn't bother to find out. I never hunted Piggly Wiggly again after that. Thanks to the internet and the collective hive mindset, I'm fairly certain what almost caught me all those years ago was a Dogman, probably of the type 3 variation. I still like to camp and hike in the woods, but I never go alone, and I never ever go into the woods after dark. You never know what is watching you. Regards, Matt. Wow, thank you so much, Matt, for sending that over. Absolutely tremendous story. That must have been such a horrendous thing to go through at such a young age as well, and an impressionable age at that. Please do let us know what you think down below in the comments, guys. I'm sure you did like that story as much as me. Of course, please do like and share. And remember, if you're looking for a Piggly Wiggly monster in the woods, just make sure you be safe, not sorry.